know what? I have spent so much time setting this up that if I break something, I break something. There's a lot of tech going behind this experimental video design. So, Hector Hectorson is the point of this video, and he has done amazing guides that I myself have used for like literally years and years, and this dude's awesome. A while ago, he caught some flack, and even back then, I was just like, you know what? Everyone saying all this crap, just go away. And to see his channel pop off, him to get all this recognition is so well deserved. And so he did a Ask Me Anything on this subreddit, and honestly, I probably spent too much time reading this subreddit. I actually really enjoy it. I'm just gonna go over all the Q&As and everything to do with that. And if I make an error on this, I'm sorry. There's a lot of different windows all in VR right in front of me, and I'm like, holy shit. So please bear with me. I'm trying to learn this. So we're only going to go over the questions he answered. So the first one is, first, thank you for your guides. I'm sure I speak for a huge part of the community when I say that they've helped empower thousands of people to communicate and learn high-end content much more effectively. My question is, outside of high-end content and all that comes with it, what do you enjoy the most about Final Fantasy XIV? Hector's answer then was, I don't know if this counts as high-end content still, but I absolutely love running Mentor Roulette and getting chucked into an old extreme with at least a few sprouts. Every now and then you get a group of new raiders who genuinely want to learn the fight, and I really enjoy trying to explain the mechanic in between the pulls and then type out callouts. It's messy, but it feels really rewarding when you manage a kill of something like Ramu Extreme with a group of sprouts. Oh, and jumping puzzles. God, I love jumping puzzles. And I'm gonna keep my commentary to minimum because otherwise I would have been like, shit, I missed Titan with Ramu, tanking Titan with Ramu. I mean, tanking Ramu with Titan was so amazing back in the day. I actually... Yoshimi did not approve of me doing that. But next question is, hey Hector, thanks for all of your hard work pumping out guides for the masses. I know it must be time consuming. What's your P time? And then Hector says, 223 days, 9 hours and 10 minutes. I started playing a little bit after the release of Shadowbringers. A lot of people did. That was actually huge. Like, a lot of people came from like that massive WoW exodus, and so it's really cool to see how many people did actually start at Shadowbringers. And then, that's not a question. So which guide that you've done are you the most proud of? And then Hector said, P5S is usually the guide that comes to mind, as there was the graphics work in my guides made the jump from laughably bad to kind of mediocre. I don't even think it was ever bad. Like, what's the other people saying? Yeah, I agree with this person, this Express Assist. Give yourself more credit, man. I went back and it's definitely better than mediocre. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, better than mediocre. I agree with that. Like, I don't think I've personally ever had an issue. I think we're all our harshest critic for sure. And then the next question was there any guide that you had a hard time making? M7S was a complete nightmare to make. 3 different phases, 2 completely different shapes and sizes for arenas, changes in perspective with the boss being on the wall, and to top it off, a huge mix of competing strats in PF, to the point that I felt I had to show at least a few alternative strats in the guide, so double, triple the amount of animation work for some phases. This was easily the longest any guide that has taken to make that I can remember. All of that is so true, and I remember I actually did my week 1 or whatever clear with Billy Seeds, and then what's actually became popular is Locked Seeds, and I couldn't get a group. I think it was last week. Yeah, I think last week. And then it was like, sorry bitch, you need to learn Locked Seeds, and guess whose video I went to for Locked Seeds, and honestly he explained it way better. Like, yeah, there's a raid plan, but the Hector video made it really clear. Next question is, why are Final Fantasy XIV players obsessed with referring to Strats as Braindead? Brother, it's so true though. Like, honestly, I know it's not a ask me anything, but for me, I want someone to make the worst fucking strat possible and call it Braindead and just see if people adopt it. Oh god, the happy brambles, no. I'm a horrible person. And so Hector's response was, I think easy to understand is what a lot of raiders value in most of their strategies, possibly second only to full uptime. Your full uptime shit. I hate it's like you can drop one GCD. Like, as a healer, do you have any idea how many GCDs I am literally forced to drop? Please have mercy on me. Casual raiders and others new to starting out will almost always take the route that makes the mechanic easier to solve, even if that solve comes with other disadvantages. Personally, I abhor the name Braindead, and it actively puts me off of wanting to show a strategy now when I see that name. I long for a return of the days of Elmo and Dwayne. Oh my god, Elmo. I mean, I can agree with this. And as someone who has done a lot of PF frogging, I can tell you, I'm just going to be really honest. Like, I will choose whatever's the safest strategy. It's just like, for even M7S that was just brought up, there was a strategy for P1 that was uptime, and it involved, it was a lot more complex than what now is really standard, which is toxic friends. Excuse me. It's first thing in the morning. I swear I had caffeine and I'm still dying. But yeah, for me, I'll always choose whatever's more consistent. And there's a lot of comments here which are valuable. I'm not trying to say they're not valuable by scrolling, but I just know that people want a shorter video. Last video was way too fucking long. No one clicked. Like shit. But next question is, a notable difference between you and other guide makers who use top-down 2D animations to explain mechanics is that the other guide makers also include some VOD footage showing the mechanic in real time. Is this something you've thought about including as well? If not, what is your thought process behind keeping the entire guide in the PowerPoint style of explanation? Hector said, I 100% see the benefit to using VOD footage in a guide and would strongly recommend anyone who uses a Hector guide, third person, Hector guide, combines it with reviewing POVs of other players on YouTube. The main barrier for me is time. The animation process for my style of guides already takes dozens of hours for any guide. Trying to shoot clean in-game footage for every mechanic would significantly add to the amount of work for each guide. I've tried saving clips of my footage while raiding, but they've never been of a quality level where I've been happy to use them in a guide. I would also run into the issue where I show strats that PF use but are not what my static personally does. This would be especially difficult to get footage of, as I often show NA strats, but I raid on EU. Oh shit, that would actually make it tough, because yeah, they do differ a lot on some shit. It's something I'm keeping in mind and might implement in the future the next time a tier falls on a school holiday. Very valid. Very, very valid. Next one is, I was wondering how you go about choosing strats to detail within your guide. Are they a mashup of things when you're running them yourself, and what is PF at the time? They probably mean curious, especially in Savage. There's always a real mishmash for the first few weeks, so I was wondering how you go about choosing which to mention or include in a follow-up later. Hector then said, this has definitely evolved over time. My earliest guides were just showing whatever worked for my group or whatever strats I had found that looked good. This meant the occasional atrocious strat being shown, like my day 1 Kexia strat for P6S, which my group did use on our day 2 kill. Nowadays it depends on the type of fight. For extreme / first floor Savage, I start with what worked for my group on our clear, then look around for any strats that are objectively better than what I used. I try to create something functional, but at least somewhat optimized, as raiders need these immediately. It is true, especially when they come out early, like, because you want to get in. I try not to spend too long fretting over minor differences in strategies. For later Savage floors, I spend a lot of time researching what PF is doing and have to make that decision as to whether I think it's worth showing anything I personally did or have found that I think is better than the common strats. Sometimes I get this wrong, like choosing to stick fully to toxic friends for M6S. I'm trying to think if it was something. But other times I think that this can be a positive, like choosing to emphasize locked seeds in M7S, despite Billy being far more popular at the time. Yeah, like I personally used Billy, and I do think locked seeds is so much easier, bro. Like, massively. Next question is, if you were to design a Final Fantasy XIV fight, what would it be like, and what mechanics would you choose? If you need something to spark your imagination, it could be the next tier M9 through 12 or for 8.0. Hector then said, this is a good one. My favorite phases from any fights are Nail from UCOB and Brute Justice Cruise Chaser from T. The Ultimate Epic of Alexander. They both play out like a more chaotic version of your classic Final Fantasy XIV mechanical dance. M6S Ads phase was pretty close in that regard. Let's say I'm designing M11S. Phase 1 would be a fairly standard tutorialization phase, teaching you the cast times and visual tells for some Proteans pairs, light parties, very reminiscent of E11, P11, and M3S. Phase 2 would be complete chaos. I'm taking an ads phase, but we use the template from E7S for the two main ads that would need to be tanked apart. And then a third untankable ad that needs to be kept separate from the other two. Throughout the phase, players need to react to randomly assigned debuffs. So simple debuffs, spread, two-person stack, gaze, maybe a player-centered knockback, but totally random assignments. Oh, and because the player's ads will stop moving whenever they're casting, the fizz range has to use foot graze to stop the untankable ad from moving. Yes, I love that. I actually get those utility skills going. Fuck, make me use Reprise, bro. As a healer. Phase 3 would be like phase 1, but throwing in some of the debuffs you learn about in ad phase to force you to resolve the classic mechanics in ways that you normally wouldn't expect to. Or, give me E8S again. That's honestly such a good Savage fight. E8S, that was like the original Shiva. Holy shit. I'm happy to pretend we haven't seen it before if everyone else is. Honestly, that was such a great fight. Next question is, what's a mechanic that you got immediately that seemed to challenge a lot of people? And conversely, are there any mechanics that you remember specifically struggling, trying to resolve in a fight, even after learning it? Seeing as people how different people's brains work, mine doesn't work, simply straight. And then poorly for others is always interesting. And then Hector said, in general, I really struggle with any spatial reasoning puzzles, especially if they ask me to flip or rotate in AoE. Bro, okay, so like, I'm going to be honest about even myself. P12S with the rotating arena and the geometric shapes, that took me personally a long time. So like, I get exactly what he's saying. Shit, that flip was so bad. This tier, I'm yet to solve the double style at the start of M6S before anyone else in my group has already moved into the correct corner. My brain seems to process that one so slow. Same with classical concepts too in P12. See, bitch. I knew it. I fucking hate that one too, bro. Without the press W strat for solving that, I had no chance at rotating those shapes in my head. I'm so glad someone else does. Fuck. That was so hard on me. On the other hand, I was super fast at calling safe spots for fun, Dynamis, Omega, and top. That mechanic somehow only took me a pull or two to call quickly and consistently. Next question, as an EU player making strat videos that end up getting picked up by multiple regions, do you find that you have a target audience in mind when you're making your videos, such as what strategies and customs, like are you using EUPF, NA, JP, OCE, what methods are you using to keep up with what other regions are using? And then his answer is, as someone who raids almost exclusively in a static, I still see my main target audience as static raiders who find raid plans confusing to learn from. I've obviously become aware that the influence of my guides can have on PF, mainly in NA and EU, and these days I spend a lot of time on Reddit and Discord researching what groups are actually doing. I also use xivpf.com a lot to see what people are using for their party finder descriptions to get an unbiased view of what raid plans are looking the most popular in each region. Next one is, your guides have become so popular because the way you can explain mechanics that allows people to understand not just how to solve the mechanic, but how the mechanic works. Can you tell us how you approach this? Hector says, a lot of this is just me applying different educational theory that is very common in the teaching world, in particular dual coding, combining visuals with verbal explanation while keeping a minimal amount of text on screen. You can't read and listen at the same time. Component/composite theory, making sure that I explain clearly any underlying parts of my mechanic components before combining them together into the full mechanic explanation. Composite. Cognitive load theory, remove any unnecessary or visual auditory distractions so that the person watching can give full brain power to what they're trying to understand. These are all things that I used to make myself a better science teacher, so they were no-brainer to use for the guides. Okay, that makes sense. So he has a background in education. So me, myself, having like a background in neuroscience, I really would love to read more on these, or like get more of his take on that. I personally would want him to go into more details. That kind of stuff is actually interesting. I know I could always Google it, but it's like cooler learning it from someone that actually like practices their stuff. Like, oh man. So the next question is legacy movement gang or standard movement gang, and then he says, whatever the default is for when you play on controller. And then unfortunately the other person deleted their comment, or I have no idea why that's unavailable. Next question is, what's your relationship with your fame, specifically in PF? Are you proud to call all the Hector strats PFs, or would you rather people use the different strats combined, or use the original names for the strats? Hector says it was kind of cool the first time I saw Hector in PF description, but it got old fast. I'm much happier when I help popularize other people's excellent strats, like with cleave maxing and locked seed. Yeah, cleave maxing is definitely what we're doing for 6 right now. It's so good. Like, especially because I'm currently on pure healer. Like, it's just like, just let me deal with that. You focus on DPSing. It's made things smoother. So when the M7S guide went up, it featured multiple strategies. Party Finder seems split on which strategies to use. Some players will be up to enrage, but still won't join the parties using strategy they haven't practiced, with no intention to learn the other strats, so parties feel slower than usual. Did you expect this type of behavior? Answer from Hector was picking strats for M7S was a horrible experience. I'm sure, actually, fuck. But they said there were a mix of strats in PFs throughout my whole time making the guide, mostly due to every phase 1 strat having at least one major downside. True. And then the predominant strat in NA for phase 2 Billy being really inconsistent. Yeah, it could be cursed. My goal was to release a guide that explained the mechanics well without adding to the noise in PF. For the most part, PF seems to be settling on Toxic Lock Toxic and Toxic Yuki Fixed. I don't know what Yuki Fixed is, but maybe unfortunately I'm going to need to learn it. But that he's saying that's in EU. Maybe NA is just not. I have no idea. So I'm hopeful the strats for this fight won't be too split in PF going forward. Well, and then next question is, why is your cat such a cute little bean? And then Hector said, I would like to take any credit for this, but I can't. He has always been this adorable. I love that. And then, why are you so short? Lala and proud. No. But mind you, people say the same about Rothgar. People really fucking hate that I play Rothgar. I'm like, brother, chill. Let me just vibe. Like, just vibe. But next question is, what got you into raiding, and what fights would you go back to and do just for fun, and what kinds of fights do you enjoy? Movement heavy, puzzle boxes, tight DPS, positioning checks, etc. Answer from Hector was, I honestly gave it a try just on a lark. Oh yeah, from the EU. I'm just like, I don't hear that often. I have had a friend drag me into Titania Extreme, and then E1S, and then E2S right as the tier was ending. I had never done anything like it before, but the Final Fantasy XIV style of raiding just clicked with me. I like my fights with lots of quick solve puzzles, where there's no guesswork to the positioning once you've solved the puzzle, but doing it quickly and consistently is a challenge. E4S Titan is a great fight for this, where the squares are an obvious check of if you're in the correct position, but figuring out which square to be in for any mechanic is the challenge. I don't particularly care for super tight DPS checks, as the fun of optimizing normally loses out on the frustration of a clean enrage. Next one is, hey Hector, love you guys, they help me a lot. As a fellow console player, I know our MMO options are more limited, but are there any other MMOs that look fun or interesting to you, or willing to try if you had the time? So Hector said, Final Fantasy XIV fight design and music are what got me hooked, far more than the MMO aspects of the game. I'm not familiar with other MMOs that play quite like 14, but I'd be happy to try any that did. Next would be, oh shit, did my thing just break? Shit, of course I got a tech error. One sec. Let me make sure that we're all good. That should be self-resolving. I should be okay. So, sorry about that interruption. So, 3 short questions. What inspired you to start making guides for high-end content? What programs do you use to make your guides? How long does a guide usually take to produce? So the answer is love of explaining mechanics to my static mates and need for better visuals for help those who need help with explanations. Then Keynote, like PowerPoint for Mac, for all of the animation work, ScreenFlow for all of the video editing. Anywhere from 1 hour for a mini guide to 30 plus hours for some of my longest guides. So probably something like that M7S. This question wasn't answered. This one. Next answered question was, what got you into guide making in the first place with so many others already creating their own, and what would you attribute to your success as one of the biggest go-tos in NA? At the time, and the answer is, at the time, I started making my own personal Hector lectures for my static. I'd only seen Miztech guides, and that one awesome June Bob animation for Hello World. Oh no. But I started making those guides because I probably enjoy explaining fight mechanics more than I do actually playing through the fight. I mean, as a teacher, that does make total sense, actually. Like, I totally get that. I'd hope that my guides are popular because I provide clear explanations of how mechanics work, in addition to showing how to solve them. I certainly don't think NAPF uses my guides because of how much they love my strats. I mean, that's fair. Like, it's just like, why do I personally go to, like, his videos? It's because it's just, it just makes sense. It's clearest to me. That's why I do them. Next one is, how do you usually work when making strats for your guide? Do you wait a bit for the first week raid plans or quick guide or before mixing it up and trying to make a guide that can take the best of each worlds? Or do you rather try and put up the strats that doesn't shake, probably shake up the meta is what they're trying to get at, of like the current popular PF strats on the data centers? And I'm sure it's a bit of both, but I would be happy to hear your thoughts about how you deal with the choices. Answer is, I'll try and explain my thoughts for this tier and similarly try to keep it short. M5S started with what my group did, which was fairly similar to Toxic Friends. Double checked whether NAPF had settled on a specific raid plan. D2 definitely not. Checked a bunch of different raid plans with ad strats that I thought were improvements over what I did. In particular, east-west spotlights, which I did find much simpler than northwest. M6S checked PF listings and saw that Toxic Friends outnumbered latte parties by nearly 5 to 1. So my guide showed Toxic Friends only, even though my own group did several things differently. Main goal was to not upset PF. This upset PF. M6S cleave max and got this one out immediately to avoid too many groups learning the TF Toxic Friends strategy for ads phase. This was in response to feedback to the M6S guide. M7S personally did TF locked TF, though with slight changes from the TF raid plan where we felt things were odd or inconsistent. NAPF was a mess on what to do with phase 2, seemingly because Billy was popular but also disliked. True. And EUPF has clearly settled on fixed seeds, kindred uptimes, seemingly used randomly for phase 1. Yeah, I did kindred uptime for like some of my first progs for that. I found it harder. Showed a mix of popular PF strats while trying to push locked seeds as something I felt strongly was an improvement over Billy. True. Tried to predict where I thought PF would settle rather than where they were at the time with my guide. M8S saw NA was Toxic Fairing Clock Quad, saw EU was Toxic Rinnin Quad. Showed only those strats exactly as the raid plans described them. PF was settled, absolutely no need to mess with it. M8S Fairing worked with people on the balance to show that PF had what PF had molded Fairing into as opposed to what the raid plan showed. True, there was a little bit of change. Next question was, how do you deal with the unwarranted backlash / hate from people who can't read or refuse to accept new strats? Answer is, honestly, I struggle with it because I don't want to switch myself off entirely from criticism, as there are plenty of reasonable criticisms and complaints about my guides that Raiders have made. Listening to what kind of feedback that kind of feedback helps me avoid repeating the mistakes that led to the biggest backlashes. I don't want to keep listening to that kind of feedback, even if it sometimes, or I don't want to stop listening to that kind of feedback, even if it sometimes hurts to read. That said, I've gotten pretty good at sussing out when a comment is just bad faith hate. For those kinds of comments, it's just water off a duck's back. Jinx Monsoon quote? Maybe. Probably not, but And then this next question is, what causes you to do guides in the first place? Also, do you ever rush for your clear or rush your videos because you feel like there is like a need to do it? I'm not trying to disregard mid-core groups because I'm a mid-core myself, but your ability to raid, I think you're awesome at what you do. But the thing is that people who usually do guides are groups that clears relatively quickly on week 1 or 2. Either they want to provide guides or make stuff for Pug, and therefore they form one, like a week 1 hardcore group, or they are originally in such groups and are making guides just a byproduct of the clear. Then there are exceptions to this rule, like, so would like to hear about what causes you to make guides in the first place. A lot of the guide makers are conscious about the fact that they are making guides and early clears, what is it? Sorry, let me review this. A lot of the guide makers are conscious about the fact that they are making guides and early clears. Hamukatsu in JP didn't make guides for this tier purely because he's not raiding week 1 and is taking his time, and therefore didn't feel the need to make guides for it. And therefore we are like 6 weeks into the tier and yet we don't have a proper video guide for MAS and JP. How would you feel about this? So the answer is, I originally made guides because I love explaining mechanics, and the guides were just the easiest way to do that for my stack. There's definitely an element of feeling pressure to clear quickly enough to be able to make my guides in time to help people who depend on them, but mostly just for the first 2 floors, I use my video analytics to help me know where the majority of my videos are, or viewers are up in the current tier, and use this to help guide the pace of my releases. Currently, M6S is still the guide most actively being referenced, so I've taken my time with M8S guides to aim for accuracy and consistency with PF. I don't feel any pressure to raid hardcore or clear week 1 for the sake of proving my stature as a raider. I am quite openly a mediocre mid-core raider. Most importantly, I don't see this as a detriment to my guide making, but rather a strength. My explanations naturally consider the areas of the game that are more casual raiders will struggle with, because they are the areas that I also struggle with. Very humble, very, very humble. Which is probably why we all like him so much. So, and plus, like, if you're a school teacher, you don't want to be like, how do you not understand the science? It is. So it's probably just naturally how he really is, just the teacher in him. Next question is, if you could choose the next mainline game 14 takes inspiration or bosses from, which would you pick, or would you prefer originality? Hector says, I'm unfortunately only really familiar with Final Fantasy, what is that, 4 and 7. I don't think the game needs more fan service for either of those. Personally, I'd actually prefer the game to have more inspiration from early Final Fantasy XIV. Like with the Eden raids, I'd like to see more bosses from Heaven's Ward and Stormblood reimagined, but outside of an ultimate level fight. That would be cool. That I agree with. Next question is, what's your favorite ultimate raid? T, Epic of Alexander, and it's not particularly close. Okay, I love T too, bro. I fucking love T. That really is what, like, I cleared Uwu first, then I got into T, bro. T is like lit. Brute Justice Cruise Chaser is easily my favorite phase of any of the ultimates. I feel like every other ultimate suffers from at least one phase that lets it down a bit, but T is great from start to finish. That said, I haven't finished Fru yet, but through to the end of phase 4 and finding a lot of fun. I love Fru. Okay, like, Fru is so great too. Like, honestly, the lesbian raid is so good. I was just, at first, I'm just like, oh my god, I need to do the lesbian raid, and like, it's so good. I'm such a fan. Next question is, hey Hector, I just want to ask, is there any reason in particular that you have never gone into doing a guide for ultimates? Your savage guides are the gold standard of guides for me. And then Hector said, I more or less stopped making ultimate guides the day I discovered Tessin's channel. I don't really think there's anything to Hector ultimate guide that the Tessin guides don't already do better. Very humble, very, very, very humble. I do see value in multiple perspectives, so I really do hope that Hector reevaluates that, because it's just like, it's not about doing better. It's more about having a diversity of approaches and different things, because sometimes just different styles of teaching, as I know that he knows, just clicks differently with different people. So I mean, while there may be existing guides, I do see the value in that. It's just like like even above, he was referencing Miztech's guides, but he made his own guides to help his static, which eventually became really popular. And again, Miztech's great. Miztech's like an OG. Shit, holy shit, like major OG, like huge time OG. So I hope that Hector really does rethink this, because I see value in it. I do. Although obviously views and stuff would speak louder than one asshole, me, online saying that, but I see value in it. I really do. Next question, what's your favorite raid? E8S holds a special spot for me as the first ever final Savage floor I cleared. Return to Oblivion still gives me chills when it kicks in. It's so good. Mechanically, P8S Phase 1 is probably the most fun I've had with any Savage fight. I'd say it's pretty good. Like, I think ads phase into Phase 2 is really cool. I really like the ads phase of E8S. I'll probably say the same about the M6S in the future too. I'll be like, whoa. Week 1 M6S ads? Holy shit, that was cool. Next question is there any aspect of encounter design that you'd like the raid team to take a more experimental approach to in the future? Hector says, I'd love for them to get back into fights that vary the order of mechanics. I get that it can hinder fight design if certain fight orders are more optimal than others, looking at you, P8S, but I feel like it does a lot to help a fight stay fresh throughout prog and reclears. A lot of mechanics can be trivialized with good pre-positioning, and this helps to counter that. Next question is, will you ever make guides for Blue Mage Rage? Ooh, that's a good question. Hector said I would have to get around to clearing the Blue Mage Raids first. They're on my to-do list, just not very near the top, unfortunately. That's fair, that is fair. Next one is, in terms of designing your videos diagrams, what would you say is the most challenging one out of all of your videos diagrams? Which one would you go back to change if you could, and which one are you most proud of? Also, what's your favorite class and why is it Fisher? No. Answer is most challenging M7S. Trying to figure out how to showcase everything in that fight from an exclusively top-down perspective was really difficult. One that I would go back to and change is M3S, particularly finally fused down. I stand by the True North solve for that mechanic is a good one and less mentally taxing for a lot of raiders. But I don't think it explained it that I explained it well at all. Most proud of was P5S. The guides earlier than this are hard to go back and look on these days. This was the first time I really felt the quality of the visuals weren't detracting from the explanation. This goes back to a previous thought that I had, is it's like he's being way too harsh on himself. Like, the visuals are fine, I used it myself. Then the next one is, what is your personal favorite class to play as, regardless of however the current rating meta may shift, so to speak? Hector says definitely warrior. I have limited brain cells, same, and I want all of them to go towards the fight mechanics. Plus, no, Lala Tank with a giant axe, classic comedy. I mean, that is his image. Like, bro, if you look at his channel, that is the image. Oh my god. Next question is, so I'm trying to find the question. How long does it take for you to create a video guide, and do you let people in real life know that you're making video guides? Thanks. And then Hector says, depends on how annoying the fight is to animate. M7F took me 30 plus hours, whereas M8S Phase 1 only took about 15 hours from start to finish. A few close friends and free company mates know about my guide making. My wife definitely knows when I'm guide making though. Oh no. Okay, and then next question is, when did you start playing 14? What has been your favorite encounter to learn and clear, and why? And then the answer is, I started playing at the start of Shadowbringers. I made it to endgame around the first near raid was released. I think my favorite encounter to learn would probably be UCOB, which was my first ever ultimate. Nail phase really offers a completely different experience to anything that I had previously seen in Savage, and I hadn't really discovered Tessin or any other video guides for UCOB at the time, so I was teaching myself the fight from the Cleave's text guide and watching POV footage from the clears. I know the fight is a shell of what it was on release, but going through the whole gauntlet still felt so amazing to clear for the first time, especially as someone who was still a fairly casual raider at the time. I will never rip on someone who like does UCOP like it. Oh my gosh, too humble. Next question is thank you so much for making your guides. They are an immeasurable tool of my understanding of mechanics. My question is, what is your favorite minion in the game? Why is it your favorite, and how did you get it? If it's not Drippy, oh, how dare. I played most of the game with a random assortment of whatever minion I feel like today. Recently, though, I normally have the Quetzal out. Isn't that bird? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the bird. Who looks adorable perched on my afro. Ew. It was a gift from one of my good FC friends. Yeah, the sentimental value does it. But it's not Drippy, so... Bleh. Thank you for all your hard work with the guides. When playing raid content yourself before established PF strats, did you have a dedicated static or PF in, and what do you like the most when making guides? Answer, I'm a full static raider. I tend to only use PF for subs or to fill groups when we don't have enough FC members for an Unreal or Extreme farm. Next one is, what's your main job role? Do you ever get tempted to make a guide that would be better suited for your job role? Hector says, I swap between healer and tank, though I try and factor in every position when it comes to optimal strategies. I specifically asked my melee to be more vocal if one of our strats is making it a pain in the to get them positionals. So, next one is, have you ever considered adding burst timings or pot windows to your mechanical descriptions? Please! Please. Actually, this is a great question. Please. Have you ever considered adding burst timings or pot windows to your mechanic descriptions? Or is that superfluous information in your guides? Do you ever think it might be helpful to mention certain timings on CDs? Or again, is that too much information bloat? For example, M8S, you don't use your 120-second tank CDs early enough, it won't be up for a third tower. And then he does say, I try mentioning where it makes a big difference for pot burst timings for ads and M success. When I get around for releasing Phase 2 guide for M8S, I will definitely mention different ways of resyncing buffs and burst following the cutscene. Sorry, there's a notification window right down there that's like telling me how many Discord messages I have, and I'm like, shit, they're piling up. So if you see me look down there, I apologize. But I'm curious. Sorry, trying to find the next one. Next question is, what is your video editing workflow? I'm particularly interested in learning about how you create your visual assets to try and keep things consistent from game to the guide. And then answer is, most of my visual assets are screenshots that I either Photoshop to make work in my guides or trace over and recreate in Keynote, think PowerPoint. I spend an absurd amount of time looking at top-down screenshots and then comparing them to my guide to get accurate AoE sizes. Fortunately, 14 tends to use consistent AoE sizes for lots of the fights, so I can often reuse assets from earlier fights and they will be already the perfect size. Next one is what lessons you've learned since first starting to make the guides. I've noticed that the quality of the strats that you've chosen to popularize has changed over time, with less head-scratching decisions more recently, in my opinion. So this person wasn't a fan of some of the original things. Maybe Happy Brambles. What determines which strat you choose, and what makes you decide to edit an existing strat for your guides? And then Hector says, up until P9S, don't clip that out of context. Well, the strats that I showed were entirely just what works for me, or what I will probably use, with zero consideration with what PF was doing. P8 was really the turning point, and I stand by that. One tile NA works beautifully and was incredibly consistent for my group all throughout Prague, but it was also not at all what PF was doing, and not enough of a gain for PF to swap to if they've already been using Scribe successfully. This was the first time I really had to start to pay attention to what PF was doing from P9S. Saying that more carefully. Onwards, I spent a lot more time researching PF strats and trying to showcase either what PF was doing or anything that I felt was a clear upgrade over what PF was doing. From P9S onwards, any amendments to existing strats were something I personally found made the fight easier and were important enough to show, at least as an option. And then next question is, I saw a picture of your cat in your official 14 community spotlight and have one question. Does your cat not have a spine? Pure liquid floof. Lol. Next one is, how do you feel about the influence that you have on NAPF? I firmly believe that you've helped a lot of people clear content, including myself, in some instances. However, I'm curious about your thoughts on how, as soon as you release a guide for a fight, PF instantly adopts it like it's the Bible, and that any strats not mentioned in your videos become obsolete. Kind of true, I'm not gonna lie. This causes a lot of suboptimal strats to be used in NAPF for the sole reason of being Hector. That has caused a lot of the hardcore community to get frustrated at times due to shitty strats becoming the PF norm. This is no fault of yours, as you have no bearing over what people do with your guides. I'm curious about how you feel about this. Hector says, I'm a mid-core raider who raids almost exclusively in stacks in EU. I think just about anyone could tell you that I'm not the best person to decide strats for the party finder in NA. These days, I'm actively trying to discourage it where possible, using the pinned comment on my videos to explain to viewers what to put in PF instead of just Hector. Like, again, like, the dude's so humble. It's, like, crazy. And so another one is piggyback off this question. How do you handle the inverse of the scenario? For instance, NAPF has rejected your 2 modifications of M7S and P3. Seeds for debris deathmatch are usually dropped 1 tile off the wall, and most healer 2s, so barrier healers, I as an off tank, so this is them talking about healer 2s even though they're an off tank, so barrier healers, so Sage Scholar, because H1s are usually pure healer, Aster, White Mage. Prefer taking northeast rather than southeast just for the final seed drops. Do you plan to either upload a revised full guide, or upload a mini guide on Toxic P3, or just leave this discrepancy as is? Hector says, this is a really tough one. These two, as well as the other lower spreads when the boss is at the short wall in phase 2, were things that I thought would cause wipes in the Toxic Friends form, as all 3 had caused at least one wipe in my own group. PF was flexible with their phase 2 strat, but far more entrenched with how they want to do phase 3. The problem I have now is how to help groups with this without doing more harm. Revised full guides that change strats can be problematic for statics that are using the guide, and I think it's unlikely many people would watch a mini guide on Toxic P3 that clarifies where PF places the seeds and has H2/OT go for the final seed drops. Probably true, because it's just like, let's be honest, like, it's just like, as someone who has PF'd a lot on healer, it's really just like, shut the fuck up, healer, just go and make it work. Like, that's the attitude of a lot of people. Like, and you think it wouldn't be? Brother, there was just a video released on, not by Hector or me obviously, that basically was like, you stupid fucking supports, just get carried. But that's the general fucking mentality of a lot of these people, so yeah, it probably wouldn't be appreciated, unfortunately. They don't, like, not the video, Cole. So Hector's answer continued of saying, I'm open to suggestions on what people think is the ideal way to help with this. I get this can be frustrating with people who wipe to this at the very end of a good pull, but I hope people can appreciate why it was difficult to know exactly what to do in the guide for this fight. Favorite food, burgers, preferably greasy and smashed. Wait, why friggin' smashed? And then the next question he didn't answer is like, favorite burgers. Oh my god. Favorite console, Super Nintendo. I try to play through almost every game on SNES Classic every Christmas break. Next question is, are there any mods that you wish you could have as a console player? Not the cheating ones, but the fluffier tail, even littler Lala triple teleporting, complete makeover, etc. Not heard of these, genuinely. Thank you for your guys. And then the answer is, I'm sure there are more quality of life mods that will eventually make it into the game officially. I think different colored names for the different roles and showing the debuff markers or debuff timers for all players. Both started mods, and they were absolute game changers for me when they were added to the game properly. True, they were very big. Next one would be, how do you feel personally about the negative takes on your guides? Does it discourage you from publishing more in the future? Do you view it constructively as a stepping stone for better guide making down the line? And then the answer is, good faith, fair criticism is always welcome. If someone's had a frustrating experience in PF because of my guides, I want to know, so I can try and change how I do things to make that less common in the future. That's definitely the professional teacher coming out. I struggle a bit more with critiques that seemingly ignore how difficult it can be to determine the best strats to show in a guide, especially when PF hasn't reached a consensus, or when NA and EU PF agree on very different strats. You can see that as being a pain in the butt for sure. Next question is, do warriors fell the cleave, or do they cleave the fell? And then Hector says, as a warrior main for many years, the only skills on my hotbar are Unga and Bunga. True. As someone who has played warrior, that's true. Next question is, I heard that for the current tier you decide to create guides after clearing the content yourself due to feedback from previous guides that feature early, sometimes bad strats. Of course, this can severely delay putting out guides during the most active weeks of the tier, such as MAS, which can be counterproductive for the community since your guides are arguably some of the best at explaining things. To my knowledge, your channel is a one-man show. What are your thoughts on collaborating with other players, creators? Have you considered recruiting help or soliciting suggestions? So Hector says, the biggest delay for this tier has been because I was teaching full-time for weeks 1 and 2, and then on holiday in Paris for most of week 3 and 4. I don't think the guides would have been able to come out any quicker, even if I had been word fierce. That said, I would definitely be opening to collaborating with other players, creators in the future for my guides. I'm open to any suggestions. Next one is, when you're making the visuals for your guides, do you ever see something that you're explaining and realize that it could be done in an easier way for more uptime, or just simpler to reduce the amount of different mechanical executions one needs to learn in the fight? For example, H2, so barrier healers, for fuse or foe in M3S, could leave the healer in the SE spot, and then the tank or melee could adjust with much less effort. Given how people like to just stick to your strategies as they are shown despite your disclaimer, can't you just iron out all the easy uptime kinks there? Ooh, that's a good one. Answer is, I actually catch things like these fairly often, but there will always be small things I miss. I mean, you're only human, dude. In that same fight, an east-west split for ranged in a final fuse down would have been an improvement on the north-south split. Same for M5S spotlights, where I think a north-south split works better for range than an east-west split. I mean, as someone who's a healer on that, he probably means range DPS, not healers. I wouldn't have made the changes you suggest for fuse or foe, as it makes the pair assignments messy. If you get quadruple lariat for the last mechanic of the fight, I'd rather avoid changing things from early mechanics, even if I had to move slightly more as a healer. And then he said he played Barry Healer H2 for that tier. And then next one is, where's the DSR P6 guide? My stack is still waiting. And then he says, go watch Tessen's Tales for DSR. Their guide is spectacular. And then next question is, what type of player are you? Answer is mid. Oh shit, we're getting into the downvoted comments. Shit, we going deep. And then the next question is, how do you feel about the heat that you get for posting guides before allegedly you've cleared specific raids? Have you completed the raids before you post a guide? How do you handle mistakes? No changes or better strats coming out later. Genuine mistakes where you get to solve or puzzle wrong. And then Hector says, nothing alleged about it. I've been quite open about the fact that I've released guides for fights I still haven't cleared. My logs are not hidden for this exact reason. For anyone curious, I can list them below. Cleared before guide release, UCOB 1, P1S, P5S, P6S, P7S, P9S, all of Arcadian. Pronged but not cleared at the time of the release. DSR, P2S, P3S, P4S, P8S, P10S, P11S, P12S. I've personally never noticed a difference in the quality of my guides depending on if my group is cleared yet. As it clear depends on 8 people all understanding correctly and executing a fight in real time, there tends to be a gap between when I fully understand the fight and when I get the clear. Yeah, normal. Especially because of my mid-core raid schedule. That said, there's a vocal subset of raiders who've made it clear that they feel clearing the fight is a necessity before the guide can be released, so I've stuck to that throughout Dawn Trail. Fuck them. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but I know why Hector's saying that. Like, it can be rough to get that hate, but fuck them. Like, honestly, the guides are so good that... This is why we can't friggin' have nice things. Like, shut the fuck up and let him do his thing. Please. Like, fuck off. And then Hector continued by saying, in general, my approach to mistakes has been to take the guide down and release a fixed version of the guide. I've done this for a few guides, P3S, P6S, and 4S. In all three cases, these were taken down for minor errors in how I showed things, and I thought were misleading enough that they would lead to raiders making mistakes. I'm not always taking down the videos for minor animation errors that I feel are harmless. M1S had a bugged animation on one of the boss jump AoEs, as it can be harmful to the channel to repeatedly take down videos. I actually haven't researched much of that. Okay, let's open some of these. But why male models? So I'm just digging through these and seeing if there's anything here. So we're really digging. No, that looks like that was it. Yeah, and so that was the Hector Hectorson Ask Me Anything thing. And yeah, honestly, I'm going to say that there was... Wait, why is there two buddy on my edge? Sorry, for this I literally had to use Microsoft Edge for the VR setup with everything. But yeah, nothing... Like, I'd say that from the answers, incredibly humble dude. Clearly has a background in teaching, as he said. That explains actually so much. I wish that he went into more detail. Like, there was a... God, that one question where he was, like, answering about, like, the different learning patterns and, like, composition and stuff like that. I would love to hear more on that stuff. I mean, obviously I could probably, like, poke around and do a little bit of Googling, but, like... Yeah, this one. Yeah, that shit's cool to me. I love that stuff. That's actually very interesting. I could probably learn something from that, actually, if I'm very honest. So, that's the Hector Hectorson Ask Me Anything, and I'm going to upload this video. Honestly, given the length, let's be real, probably no one's going to watch this, but I think that it was great to see him do this. I think that it was great to see the subreddit promote like this and for him to answer it. Very humble guy, clearly. I'm obviously a huge fan of their work. Like, even if you go back, like, I'm not a big commenter, like, I'm a very big lurker. Like, if you make Final Fantasy XIV videos, there's a like, I'd say probably like 99% chance I've watched at least one of your videos. But I'm a huge lurker. But like, even if you go back a few years, there was like one video that I kind of felt like I had to like comment on because like there was some blowback, and I'm just like, bro, like, thank you for your guys, like, they actually helped me out because like they really did. Anyhow, this isn't a yapping session for me, and honest to God, I would be shocked if this video actually doesn't have an error, but we're gonna go with it. So let's see if it errored out. Cat Daddy, that subscribe button. Also, look, I'm in space. Oh my god, I'm such a dumbass. I don't know if the space would even show.